There are definitely two of the fuckers out there, and at the moment they're holding their distance for some unknown reason. To me, they smell of death and soil, old tombs and still air, heated stone and such other cliched shite that you would associate with these bastards. Yeah, I can stink 'em. You can probably guess what they are already. I mean, every fucking werewolf story has to have these bastards dropping it to ruin it somewhere. Although I have to feel better knowing that these were not the sparkly lovelorn types, just those psychotic narcissistic types. Usually I would have got on with them quite well. But these guys, I think they're so far up themselves that they fart through their mouths. There is a male and a female. I mean, it's difficult to tell with these twats. Not that I'm judging them on gender or things, that's their choice, and I do not give a fuck what anyone wants to be. No, I don't think they have the right to be. I just don't care enough to have an opinion. I think, personally, though, that some of them read the Anne Rice books and thought that androgynous was the way to go. But at least I like to repeat, they're not fucking sparkly. Do you know how much both werewolves and the ancient ones hate fucking Twilight? Sparkly? I sort of recognise a female. I think I might have met her before. Well, my posit had. And he starts raging on about the fact that she was really annoying in the past and it would be really nice if we could actually not meet them. Fen, my wolf soul, hates these creatures more than anything else, which is saying a lot as he's a real big ball of hate. The problem for him is that they get idolised and shit when werewolves in literature never get the same love. Their charisma is all fake too. I mean, they emit some kind of glamour that means that any human that looks at them sees them as the pinnacle of what they want as a partner, a friend, or even fuck buddy. I have natural charisma and good looks. These twats rely on magic, weak ass fuckers. I'm hunting on the streets of Tokyo of all places. It is my first holiday in Japan, and I have to say it's a crazy place. It's like any modern metropolis, just a little more Tokyo. Then behind the scenes are areas of tiny streets and they're stacked with huge populations. It's really not what I expected, to be honest. It's such a clash of the future and the past that it warps the mind a little. Also, the lack of space is fucking killing me, to be honest. I made the mistake of staying in one of those micro hotels because I thought it would be cool, but being trapped in a small tube with an annoyed posit is a fucking hell. I mean, the two of us in there just ended in a huffy fight. Currently I'm in my wolf form eating a small Japanese meal that I accidentally ran into, which is often the way with fast food. You know what they say about Japanese food though, it's only a temporarily filling, so you often have to eat lots of it. They like their food fresh here too. I mean, I ate sushi yesterday that was still moving when I picked it up. They did not kill the grouper, they just chopped it up while it still lived and gave me its living flesh. That is how flesh should really be sampled. So this little meal is still complaining as I break into its abdomen for some hot bloody meat. Anyway, the night walkers, as they arrogantly call themselves, need to be addressed. Yes, they are definitely here. They think they are so fucking cool. They think that I've not noticed them, but as if they could get anywhere near me without me noticing them. I could hear them, see them, and smell them, but I did my best to pretend that I had not noticed them. They always hate it when you spoil their oh-so-cool entrances. I mean, I did kind of expect them to drop into the alley and land in superhero poses to introduce themselves, which, to be honest, would have actually been quite cool. But they did not even have the decency to do that. They just kind of walked up to me and started an unwanted conversation. A strangely sexy but sibilant voice gently spoke to me from my rear as I ate. It was more female than female and had that hoity-toity arrogant hint that it had gone to a really posh school, or the pretense it did. I mean, it was like the Edinburgh accent. You know, the one where they do a posher English accent than posh English people. It is as though people from Edinburgh have decided that they are better at everything than the English, including their accent. The way they speak is properly annoying and must involve them never actually moving their lower jaw. They learn it through having a mouthful of marbles or something. I'm not sure, but God, it was posh. It was a posh bird's voice, and it made me a little warm in the groinal region. But these creatures tend to do that. It's kind of one of their things. Shit, looking back on it now, I realised I was like, well, actually, it was like, shit, that was it. It was an impression of Kate Beckinsale. Hello, doggy, and what are you up to this evening? This made the hairs on the back of my neck rise, and all I wanted to do was let that voice scratch me behind one of my ears. I struggled, but managed to ignore her because I knew it would really piss her off if I did. So I just kept on eating, making sure that my table manners were at a disgusting level and that blood was flying with gobbets of flesh in all directions. The dark ones do hate untidiness. They are anal, and not in a good way. They're proper OCD. I mean, the idea that if you spill rice, that they will count every rice grain up and return it to the pot is a bit of a misnomer, but they definitely would clear it up if they could. Then up sprang the male equivalent voice. It was quite greasy and shiny, but had that erotic overtone that normals could never achieve. Dog, my sister talks to you. How do you think you are ignoring her? At this point, inwardly, Fen and I had a little giggle to ourselves. The voices were, well, hot as fuck, and you wanted to definitely shag them. Sorry, nothing too so crass. You wanted to make love to their voices, but their glamour held nothing over me. I allowed a beautiful fart in A minor to pass from my ass. I knew this would be an anathema for these creatures, but I would have fun with them because these fuckers thought they ruled the world. Well, they kind of do, but they don't rule me, so they can fuck off with their high-mindedness and the idea that they're better than anything else. I could sense them now walking around me, staring with a mix of ill humour and a little interest. They talked amongst themselves in a telepathic language that I could hear, but could not understand. It was some high gothic shit or something. They were getting angry at my lack of interest. This was so cool. They eventually walked around gracefully to stand before me while I ate my meal. They were not so stupid as to be too close, but they were close enough so that if and when I looked up, I would be met with their glory. They stood there for some time. A long time. The female started to tap her foot, so I could tell I was getting on her tits, which was the point. She did really have nice tits too. I mean, the bralette thing that she wore was obviously black lace, and the breasts were small like those of a dancer. I suppose not everybody's thing, but they were pretty much perfect. I would have happily spent 30 minutes with them on a rainy, Sunday afternoon. After more passive-aggressive ignoring, I decided I had done this enough, so I looked up at them and did that quizzical dog head turn thing that dogs do when they try to feign interest in something. I was in my wolf form, so this may have looked somewhat comical from an 8-foot-tall big black dog. When I looked up, it was at what were two of the most beautiful creatures that I had ever seen. I mean, fucking gorgeous, especially if you got a thing for goths, which, to be honest, I do. She was in big black boots that ran to her knee in a somewhat pirate style. Her lovely legs were coated in shiny latex leggings, which could only really be worn by someone dead and who did not sweat for any length of time. A living person would be in chafing hell with those bastards. Over her lovely breasts, have I mentioned her beautiful breasts? She wore a bra top that was designed to sync well with the tattoos that coated her skin. Very nice indeed. And lastly, to top it off, as if it were, she had an open, long leather jacket, all Neo style from the Matrix. I always wonder if the vamps copy the films or if the movies copy the vamps. I'm not sure. Their faces, well, I could go into their description in great detail, but think of a really hot elf out of Lord of the Rings and make them very pale with black hair. Think evil, sexy elf. Yeah, that's it, you have it. He was pretty similar in a weird sort of way, a cross-dressing, androgynous way, apart from the fact they had a ruffled shirt and a feckin' red satin cummerbund of all things. Her hair was piled on her head in a hairstyle that would take hours to produce to make it look like she'd just thrown it up there. It was held by 2 black chopsticks in a bun, but her hair was so long that it still cascaded down her back and seemed to have a life of its own. His hair was shaved on one side and down past his shoulder on the other side. I would look a real twat if I had that hair, but somehow it worked for him. I suppose some of us are just cool, others have to try. I mean, look at Brad Pitt in Snatch, dressed in dirty white fronts, a string vest and a pork pie hat. How the fuck was he still cool in that film? Well, that was like these guys, they just oozed coolness and it pissed me off. Their eyes were exactly the same. Both had purple irises like wells that would gladly, you would gladly throw yourself into without hesitation. I'm not affected by the magic auras they throw, but I was gagging to do whatever they wanted for them. They just sucked you in, and it was very difficult to break eye contact with them once you've established it. Honestly, these wankers have it all on their side. They don't. Why don't we get any of that kind of shit being werewolves? They stood there all sexy and stuff in cool swaggers. There was no wind, but somehow their hair flowed under the breath of an imaginary air around them. They both held perceived and perfected hateful smiles that started and ended at their mouths and showed arrogance. Oh, and of course the evil cunt's pointy little teethies. Yeah, they were fucking vampires. I hate vampires. Not in the werewolf versus vampires way of the underworld and every other fucking novel way, but in the way they're just so fucking cool without trying that it actually hurts my feelings. I mean, if they actually went to bed and got up, I bet they looked like that straight away. Maybe that's it, the fact that the bastards never went to bed. Fucking vampires. Well, here we go. Let's see what the twats wanted and how I could ruin their respective night. I sat on my hindquarters, staring with the pretense that I was mesmerised with their resplendent glory. Then on purpose, because I'm a bit of a dick, I burped, yawned and started licking my dick and balls, because as a wolf, I can do that, and I thought it would be very amusing, and to me, it really was. Unfortunately, they both realised I was fucking about and started clapping and smiling at me. The female bent over and waited for me to finish, and then look at her. "Have you been a bad doggy?" She sniped and looked at her twin. I assume it's a twin, and laughed. They obviously thought they were being hilarious because they both broke into laughter that sounded so fucking nice. I hate vampires. Language is a little tricky with a wolf voice box. It really does not work, and the tongue is too long and so on. So I decided to transform back to my human form to contend with these two in a more understandable way. I sat cross-legged on the ground as a naked man and looked up at the two of them and offered a smile, pointed at my meal and asked, "Want a bit?" The two looked upon the mess that was once a body and looked disgusted at the offer. I mean, these beautiful faces did disgust really well, and I did feel a little bad initially for offering it to them. They have the power to make you feel less than them. It's very impressive to make me feel a lower being with my ego. What? Why would we eat from the scraps you offered, dog, from your pitiful table? The girl asked as she squatted down to eye level with me, thinking that, I would be mesmerised by her hypnotic eyes if she was at that level. "Sorry," I protested. "Just asking because I thought I was being polite about it. If that's how you're going to be, if that's going to be your attitude," I said as I got up from the floor, smiled at the two of them and turned to walk away. Plink. They somehow moved so fast that they were now standing in front of me in the same exact pose as prior. I smiled as though I was awed by the piece of shite magic. "Wow, that was amazing. Are you like magicians or some shit? Where can I catch your act? Don't tell me you have a residency in Las Vegas, don't you? Actually, looking at you, that would be ridiculous. I mean, can you imagine having that skin tone as white blue as you are and living in Las Vegas? What's your stage name?" "Ha ha." The male did not laugh the ha ha, but actually spoke it. "We are not stage magicians or tricksters, little dogmen. We are the Immortals." The Immortals? That's a fucking awesome stage name. Do you do a lot of dangerous shit with knives and guns? "No, feral one. We don't do stage magic." "So your street performance, can you show me a card trick?" "I would love that. I hear that it's a lot more difficult to get away with tricks when performing on the street." "No, you are really stupid. We are not simple fake magicians. We are the real thing. We are..." Pause for fucking dramatic effect. "Vampires." I stood and looked at them. giving them a quizzical sort of look up and down. I was still naked, but perfectly unabashed at being so. I mean, I'm pretty relaxed in all my forms. I smiled at the girl and then winked to the boy. Of course you are, I said in my most patronising voice as I turned my back on them, as if the conversation was over, and began to walk away laughing to myself. They, again, materialised in front of me. I purposefully took a look behind me to pretend to check if they were still in the original spot and turned back. Whoa, that is fucking cool. But I know how you did this one. I do. You both have twins and you switch between them to do this kind of thing. One set of twins hides down there and the other up here, and on the signal you come out and that's it. I saw it. Penn and Teller showed it, I think, or was it the Master Magician? I can't remember. That's the way you did it, innit? I kept rattling on, trying to continue to speak inane nonsense because I knew it was driving them mental that I was not just standing there in awe of their magnificence. I mean, I'm a bit of a poser, but these guys take it to the next level. People think that vampires are all about blood, but in reality, they are all high-level narcissists who thrive on the worship of their minions more than anything else. This means that when I meet them, I make sure they realise that they are I think they're pointless dicks I would never idolise. Enough of this. My sister and I came doggy hunting tonight for some sport, and you are the sport, the male vamp said. This made me quiet. This could be interesting. Vamps and werewolves, as far as I knew, ignored each other as often as they could. I mean, why would we fight when we've so much prey available? It doesn't really make sense. I looked around as though looking for their sports that he had mentioned, then overly dramatically acted as though I realised that they meant me. I pointed to myself and gulped as though pretending to be scared. You mean you're hunting me, do you? Why? Are you going to kill me? The girl laughed as she strode off to my left. I have often wanted to meet a werewolf and see what they are like. You are the first. I am over 1,000 years old, and am no longer satisfied with the hunt of the human. It is too easy, and they are too pathetic to give any resistance. But finally, here we have true sport. A werewolf. I will bring you down and drink your blood from your still living body while you are incapable. I will take your head and place it on the wall of my mansion as a reminder of this day. She turned and paused for dramatic effect as her jacket and hair swirled around her and fell about her body. Shit, they do a lot of pausing for dramatic effect. I love it when a posh bird talks dirty, I said, clapping. Keep it up, love. I can put this image in the words in my wank bank for a later date. The man then moved to the opposite side of me and started to talk to gain my attention. Enough, you mangy beast. Prepare yourself for battle. You are about to be tested, bested, and killed right here. Your time has come to die by our hands. Your life is forfeit to your betters, your masters, the immortals. Sorry, if you would have read that, I would have used more than one exclamation mark there, but it really did need it. I mean, he was properly enunciating and so cool. Suddenly, I was horizontal at head height as my werewolf flew towards the throat of the man-thing, child of the night-thing vampire. He reacted but was not quick enough, and I had my jaws wrapped around his neck and dragged him to the ground, shaking and ripping at the flesh. My teeth shredded his meat, and the thick blood flowed. He cried out as I worried him, much like a terrier worries a rat. Everything had happened so quickly that she did not realise the significance of what had just happened. She stared at me, now lying as the wolf, my paws on the body of her, I assumed, twin, crunching on the neck and the upper torso as though the vamp was a chew toy. His protestations for help got weaker as sanguination robbed him of his voice. It took a while for the reality to sink into of what just happened. She stood and stared in utter disbelief on her face as she saw the results of what happened. "My brother," she screamed to the sky. "Let him go!" I pinned my prize with my front paws, raised my head and shook it in a no, then went back to licking the blood from the vampire's wounds. "We have been together for thousands of years, and you have killed him. You are killing him," She was pretty pissed off. She just stood there and pointed at me. I shrugged as I now started to eat the flesh before me. It was actually very tasty, to say it was as old as they said. I expected it to taste really bad because it was dead, but it tasted fresher than anything I'd ever eaten before. Maybe that was part of the vampire's magic, that they maintain their bodies really nice. Looking at her, there was not a wrinkle or a sign of age on that body. Sitting here waiting for a vampire and thinking about the science base behind him. You know what? Will, at times you're such a fucking nerd. Her voice became screechy and she bent at the hip and spat the next few words. I am going to destroy you, Holy. I will steal your soul from you and send it to the very darkest place of hell. I will brutalize you and torture you and all those you love and care for. I will cage you and drain you every day. I will torture you in as many ways as I can. I will hurt you for the rest of your life, and I will hurt you so well. You will beg me to be released from your life because you cannot go on. Your hope will be taken. Your want for life. See, now in most situations when they get this way with their threats, it usually means they cannot carry them out. But I was not 100% sure with the vampires because, well, who the fuck knows the truth about vampires? But if she could really do what she was saying, why would she be telling me and not doing it personally? I find these moments a little bit awkward. Then it happened. I mean, literally, it stopped to watch because I think this was proper magic that was going on now. There was a purple flash, like a rift in the air above her head, which opened. I mean, like one of those portal things that you see on The Witcher. It was like circular and expanded from the centre and formed a perfect coruscating circle above her head. It was fucking amazing to see. I could see darkness and another set of stars in the sky in that hole. I thought I could see fucking pyramids behind everything, but that might have just been me trying to make this cool thing even cooler. The body before me whimpered on the floor, so I held it down so that it could not, that it wouldn't stop the fun. With her distraction, I had not noticed that the fucker on the floor was regenerating. Ah, shit, I did not realise that the cunts could do that. I mean, I've seen it in the movies, but really did not realise that was a thing they could do, so I tore its head off and threw it as far away from the body as I could. That would at least slow the process down, if not stop it. But at this point, I had to get back to watching what the fuck was going on with her and the purple ring in the sky. I mean, this made Harry Potter stuff seem extremely shite. I cannot do it justice in the description, but if you've several million to spend on CGI, it would look like that. It was just fucking cool. The hole in the air suddenly fell and swallowed the woman. It then rattled, fizzed, and shrunk and disappeared into nothing. I stared for some time at the point on the floor, but nothing more happened. Had she run away? Thank fuck for that, I thought. Then suddenly she dropped from the sky and landed in the exact spot where the vampire had stood before. If I could have spoken, I would have been speechless. Of course, she landed in the most brilliant superhero pose, all athletic and shit. In each hand was a black sword that looked as though it had been designed by H.M. Geiger. I mean, they were inorganic and organic at the same time. Wicked. Her outfit was now so BDSM nightclubby that most 15-year-old boys would have lost a load just looking at her. She wore it with highly polished leather or latex, and to say it was figure hugging would have not given it a fair description. It looked like it was painted on her, and the painter had been a very lucky person because, wow. On her head she had a crown of black metal that could have been a 50th level helmet in some of those role-playing games where females' armour gets stronger but made with less material as they go up the ranks. Let's just say wow. She held her pose, one sword laid along the floor, the other raised to the sky. She lifted her head and opened her eyes, and her eyes were not those of a human anymore. They gave off like a purple light, a bright and seditious purple light that seemed to pass through me. It felt like she could see into me. She could read my dark soul and be judging me as not worthy of her time. Slowly she stood and raised the sword to either side of her as she took on yet another pose from the book of badass bitches posing. She must spend a lot of time in front of the mirror doing this shit. Can I be honest? I've always had a thing for Celine in Underworld movies, but Kate, if you're reading this, do not take it badly. I mean, I still fancy the fucking ass off you, but this was, well, I've run out of appropriate superlatives. I would have crawled through broken glass to sniff the rear tyre of the laundry van that carried her dirty pants. Now, you can probably work out that I'd not really been paying too much attention to things because this shit was happening in front of me, and as much as she looked proper cool, I must have looked a right twat with my jaw hanging open, staring at her like, well, the single nerd at the high school dance staring at the popular cheerleader chick. She began to walk around me in a practiced method. I recognised the triangle step of the Carly practitioner and the smooth and live lunges of the fencer. This woman was trained. Oh shit, I was going to get mensed up by her. She stopped and took on a fighting stance. I shook my head and transformed into my werewolf form as she lunged. Both swords were out ahead of her to skewer me. I ripped up a signpost from the ground and hit her with the end that still had a huge concrete ball on it from where it had been held in the ground. She flew sideways with the impact and did a couple of tumbling backflippy things to regain her balance before I hit her again with the flung post. This time it drove her back and slammed her into the side of a car that folded slightly around her. Then there was silence. Now, I've seen enough Marvel films to know this was not the end of her, so I looked around for something else I could hit her with when she regained her composure. It was definitely not over at this point because, well, we've seen the films. It would have been a waste of all that CGI, wouldn't it? There was not much for me except some storm grates in the road. Desperation being the mother of invention, I managed to lever them off the floor and set them on my hands like knuckle dusters. My mistake had been not paying attention to her though, just for a moment, because I felt something slam into me from behind, combined with absolute searing pain. I looked over my shoulder to see her swords buried to the hilt. They pierced my upper torso and she was being a twat by rotating them, ready to slash them out of my body. Now that would have really hurt. Instead I leapt forward, removing myself from the blades, and span and missed so badly with a swung right that I span off round and off-balanced myself and ended up sitting on my ass in front of this beautiful murderer. Her mistake at this point was that of every movie baddie since the 50s. I mean, I think it is James Bond's fault personally, because everybody since then gloats, which is what she did. She stood and smirked and started to say something witty, which I did not hear, as a large metal grate hit her right in the pretty mouth and set her some distance from her original point on her back. She was lying silently, but yet again I knew this was not it, so I ran over to try and fit in the coup de grace. But of course she flipped to her feet and waited for my charge, both swords raised, spitting a mouthful of blood from her perfect, well, bloody mouth. That's right, it was still a perfect mouth. I just hit her right in the perfect mouth with 40 pounds of raw iron, and she had a little cut lip. In my head both Finn and I said the same thing. Ah shit, we might be fucked here. As she stood in front of me, I realised that I might have to try another angle of approach, or I might just be dead. At that point, a screaming siren could be heard in the distance coming towards this spot where we stood, and then there was 2 sirens, and then there was 3, and then 4. The first police car turned into the alley, and the bright headlamps spotted us out from the background and stopped us from our continuing battle. Never said this before, but "Thank fuck for the police," shouted Fen in my head. Then the next car came to a halt, and the next. I looked at her and she burned her gaze in mine. "This is not done, dog. You will die. I will hunt you," she said. I could see that she was desperate to continue the fight, and she was having a huge amount of difficulty walking away. But then she turned on the spot, and all evidence of her and her brother was gone. I looked around and thought about my next move as more police cars and people arrived. Then it came to me in a sudden flash. In this case, the best course of action was the great call to action: run away. So I ran. Thanks for listening. Please comment below if you could, and like, and follow, and click things, and press bells, and all those kind of things. Subscribe, share my stuff if you want. There's a podcast. There's loads of stuff. Please do things. Love you loads. Bye.